The man from the lending office had driven out from Tulsa with a folder on the seat beside him and a deadline already decided before he left the building. He set the folder on the kitchen table, and he said the figure the way men say figures when they have stopped thinking of them as money and started thinking of them as procedure. $800. 60 days passed. The property would be assessed if the balance was not cleared by the end of the month. It was September 1961, and the farmstead sat 11 miles outside of Claremore, Oklahoma, in the kind of country where the red dirt roads go straight until they don't, and the oil derricks stand still against a sky that goes on until it The farmhouse had a screen door that didn't close all the way, and a porch with 2 chairs that had been there since before the war. Del Haney had worked that land for 17 years. He had come back from Korea in 1953 with a discharge paper and a left knee that would never again do what he asked it to. And he had come back to this place because it was the only place he knew how to come back to. Del was 44 years old. He had his hat on the table and his hands around a coffee cup that had gone cold. He was not arguing. He was listening the way a man listens when he already knows the words and is just waiting for them to stop. At the end of the table, next to the window, a man in a canvas work shirt with his sleeves rolled to the forearms was nursing a cup of the same cold coffee. He had come in 2 hours ago with a film crew working locations along Route 66. He had needed to use the phone. Del's wife Norma had offered coffee, and he had sat down the way a man sits when he is in no hurry and the sitting is no imposition, and then the man from Tulsa had arrived, and the phone call had become secondary. Nobody had introduced him. He had not introduced himself. He was watching the man with the folder. Here is the story. Del Haney had gotten the land from his father Clarence, who had gotten it from his own father before the dust came in the 30s and took everything that wasn't nailed down hard enough. Clarence had kept it. He had kept it by working a second job at the feed depot in Claremore 6 days a week for 11 years, while he had kept it because he was the kind of man who understood that some things are worth keeping at any price. He had handed it to Del the same year Del graduated high school, 1935. And Del had worked it alongside his father until 1951, when his draft notice came. Del served with the 7th Infantry Division in Korea. He was at the Chosin Reservoir in November and December of 1950, 17 days of temperatures that went to 30 below, and a Chinese offensive that hit the perimeter on all sides and did not stop. He came out of the Chosin carrying a man named Royce Pettit from Enid, Oklahoma, who had taken a round in the left shoulder and could not walk unaided. He carried him 4 miles. His own knee went somewhere in those 4 miles and never entirely came back. Royce Pettit survived. Del was decorated and shipped home to Walter Reed and then to Claremore and to the farm his father had kept since the dust. He had run it alone since 1955, when Clarence died of a stroke in the barn with a feed bucket still in his hand. Norma had been beside him every day of those 6 years. She was up before him in the mornings and in bed after him at night, and she had never once treated the land as something she had married into rather than something she had built. They had no children. They had 17 years of working this place and a deed with Clarence's original signature still on it, and a mortgage that had been manageable until the dry summer of 1960 took 40% of what they should have, harvested, and left them short for the first time in the history of the Haney name on that land. The loan had come from a Tulsa lending company in the spring of 1961, $800 to cover the shortfall from the previous year and to seed the new season. Del had made 2 payments on time, and then the knee had required a surgery the VA covered only in part, and the 3rd payment had not gone, and the 4th had not gone. And now the man with the folder was at the kitchen table explaining the terms of default in a voice that had explained this before and would explain it again to someone else before the week was out. He was not cruel. That was almost the whole of it. If you have ever sat at a table and watched the thing your family built for 3 generations get discussed like a line on a spreadsheet, drop your state in the comments. I want to know how far this one travels. Dell set the coffee cup down. He said he needed a few more weeks. He said the fall harvest would cover most of it. The man with the folder said the policy was the policy, and the policy said end of the month, and he was sorry, but there it was. The screen door moved in a wind off the field. The man in the work shirt had not moved. He was looking at the folder on the table. Then he looked at Dell's hands. Dell's hands were around the cold cup, and they were not shaking, which was the thing about them. They were very still, in the way that hands get still when a man has decided he is not going to let anyone see what is happening inside him. The man in the work shirt pulled his chair back from the table. He did it slow. The chair legs dragged on the linoleum, and the sound of it filled the kitchen for a moment. He stood up to his full height in that low-ceilinged farmhouse kitchen, and he looked at the man from Tulsa, and he said, "What's the figure?" The man from Tulsa looked at him. Something shifted behind his eyes. He said, $800. Wayne said cash. It was not a question. He reached into the inside pocket of the canvas jacket and he counted it out on the kitchen table the way you count something when you want every person in the room to see each bill land. He counted it in 20s. He counted it to 800 and he set the last bill down, and he did not look up from the table until he was finished. Then he looked at the man from. He said, "Write the receipt out to Delbert Haney. Full satisfaction of the balance." He said it the way you say a thing that has already happened. The man from Tulsa looked at the money on the table. He looked at the man standing on the other side of it. He opened the folder. He took out the receipt book. He wrote the receipt in the handwriting of a man who has decided not to have an opinion about what is happening and would like to be back in his car. He slid it across the table to Dell. Dell looked at it. He read it once. He looked up. His mouth opened and nothing came out, which was the right thing, because there were no words that fit the size of what had just happened in his kitchen, and to try to find them would have been false. His hand moved toward the bills on the table. Wayne said, "Leave it." Dell's hand stopped. Wayne said, "I have a picture shooting south of here next spring. I'm going to need a location that looks like it hasn't been touched. This land looks like it hasn't been touched." He paused. "I'll have somebody call you about the rate." He picked up his hat from the back of the chair. He put it on. He said to Norma, "Thank you." He walked through the kitchen and out the screen door that didn't close all the way and across the porch and down to the gravel drive where the crew truck was parked. He did not look back. The man from Tulsa put his folder under his arm and left without being asked twice. Del Haney sat at the kitchen table for a long time after both vehicles were gone. Norma stood at the kitchen. She watched the dust from the gravel road settle. Then she watched the land, which was still, the way land is still in September, when the light is coming from the side, and the shadows of the oil derricks stretch long across the red dirt. Dell picked up the receipt. He read it again. He put it in the chest pocket of his shirt. He sat there a while longer with his hand over. The fall harvest of 1961 came in better than the one before it. Del Haney made the next 3 payments on the loan without missing one. He paid off the balance in full by March of 1963. He ran that land for 22 more years after the morning in the kitchen. 22 more plantings, 22 more harvests, 22 more winters, with the furnace working and the deed on the wall. The film crew did come the following spring, as promised, and Dell received a location fee that was significantly more than the going rate, and which he did not question and did not mention to anyone. His knee was replaced in 1971 at the VA hospital in Oklahoma City. The surgeon told him it was one of the worst he had seen come in still walking. Del said he had been meaning to get to it. He and Norma never had children of their own. They had a nephew, Gary, Norma's sister's boy, who came to the farm every summer from the age of 8, and was there when Del was planting, and was there when he was harvesting, and learned the land the way a person learns a language when they are young enough to absorb it, without trying. Gary Haney took over the farm when Del retired in 1983. He has run it since. That is 42 years of the same land under the same family name, starting from the year Clarence Haney held it through the dust. Gary has a son. The son's name is Clarence, after the great-grandfather. He is 26 years old. He works the land alongside his father. 3 generations on the same red dirt, on a deed that has not changed hands once since the day. In 2009, Gary found a receipt in an old tin box in the back of the farmhouse closet. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was clear. Full satisfaction of balance. $800, September 1961, in the name of Delbert Haney. Gary did not know, for a long time, where the $800 had come from. Del had never said. Norma, it was a thing that happened in the kitchen one September morning, and then it was over, and the land was still there, and there was nothing more to say about it. The receipt is in the same tin box, on the mantel in the farmhouse living room. The afternoon light comes through the west window and sits on it for about an hour before the sun drops behind the tree line, and the room goes the particular gray of an Oklahoma evening in any season. The tin box stays where it is. The land goes on outside. Wayne never mentioned it to anyone. Not to the director of the picture that was shooting south of Claremore. Not to any member, not in any interview, not in any letter, not in any conversation that anyone ever recorded or repeated. The $800 left his pocket in a kitchen in Cherokee County, Oklahoma, and that was the end of it as far as he was concerned. There is a thing that happens when a man has been to the places Del Haney had been the chosen in November. The temperatures that stopped the 4 miles with Royce Pettit from Enid on his back and a knee coming apart under him. It marks a man in ways that do not show on the outside, or not in ways you can point to. What Wayne saw at that kitchen table was a man who had already paid more than $800 in every currency that isn't money, and who was sitting quietly while someone explained a policy to him, and who was not going to ask for help, because men who have done what Del Haney had done do not ask. Wayne had no patience for a world that would let a man like that sit in his own kitchen and lose what his grandfather kept through the dust. So, he didn't let it. If this story reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you haven't yet. There are more stories like this one, and every one of them deserves to be told. And unfortunately, they don't make men like John Wayne anymore.